Hello, everyone. This is Professor Reynolds from my office in Molloy Hall at the University of Notre Dame. This is video number 5 in our course on the Church and Islam, and I'll be introducing a little bit more about the historical relationship between Christians and Muslims, and especially drawing attention to the experience of Christians living in the Islamic world. This builds on our previous lecture, in which I spoke very briefly about what the Quran and the Hadith have to say about Christianity and how the first Christians responded to the Islamic conquest. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will begin with the basic topic here. Let me get into the right page, and we'll start off from the beginning. How about that? Okay, so 2 topics as usual. First is, what is a dhimmi, this really important term for understanding the place of Christians and Jews and other groups like Zoroastrians, for example, under Islam. And then what is the experience of Christians been like in the Islamic world through the centuries? So dhimmi, maybe just to take a step back before I introduce the term itself, the Quran is aware of other religious communities. It has an ambiguous relationship to them. Here in Quran chapter 22, verse 17, it mentions Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, and another group that we don't know exactly who is in mind. Here, the Sabaeans, and ends with a note saying simply that God is a witness to all things. In fact, historically, when Islam conquered these territories that included these different religious communities, the early Muslims decided on a status for non-Muslims who didn't convert to Islam as dhimmi, sometimes translated as protected or tolerated people. And what did it mean to be a dhimmi? Well, the dhimmis were understood that they would pay a special tax, and that was profitable for the early Islamic world and the early Islamic empire, which relied on that tax and the funds it provided. Here we have the second caliph, known as Omar, saying we should fulfill God's convention with the dhimmis because it is the source of your livelihood. And we notice that there are various examples of Muhammad himself paying respect to Jews and Christians. So the story of Muhammad's relationship is not only negative with Jews and Christians, but here, for example, he stands up when the body of a Jew passes by in a funeral procession, and his followers say, but that's a dhimmi, it's not a Muslim. And he says, but is it not a soul? Dhimmis were generally understood to have certain rights and certain restrictions. They had to pay a certain tax. They had to deal with marriage and divorce laws that favored Islam. And they had to deal with the persistent problem of slavery and concubinage. So the possibility of those dhimmis who were not, or those Jews and Christians who were not in the Islamic world and protected, could be captured and made into slaves or concubines within the Islamic world. These are complicated by a principle the Quran itself presents, which is that there is no compulsion in religion. Quran chapter 2, verse 256. But historically, Muslims found a source of legitimacy for discriminatory measures against Jews and Christians in a document known as the Pact of Omar, which is supposed to be a document that second caliph, whom we've already heard about, established with the Christians in Syria, and gave a whole list of restrictions of things that they could not do. This is actually only a partial list on the PowerPoint slide. But there are many restrictions, for example, that Christians will not build new churches, repair old churches. They will always show respect to Muslims by rising for their seats, etc., etc. In fact, historically, the Christian population in the Islamic world has consistently declined. This has been due to conversions, but especially due to the relative growth of Islam through marriage laws. Muslim men can marry Christian women, but Christian men cannot marry Muslim women, which means that the children of those mixed marriages were always Muslim, raised as Muslims. There was also a significant influx of slaves, many of whom were Christians, different places from Southern Europe, Southeastern Europe, from Africa especially, who were converted to Islam. And then in more recent times, Christianity has declined because of the significant decline in the Christian birth rate. There have been also waves of violence in certain places, but not consistently. So we have the terrible story of the genocides in Turkey in the late 19th, early 20th century. But as a rule, throughout the Islamic world, Christians and Muslims have lived in friendship. That image there is from Beirut, downtown Beirut, where you have a new church steeple and a new mosque coexisting, representing the coexistence since the Civil War of Christians and Muslims there. And of course, Christians can learn from Muslim piety, and Muslims often admire Christian saints, from Saint Francis to Mother Teresa. So that does it for this lecture. In our next lecture, we're going to enter into a little bit more detail about certain figures who give us hope for the future of Muslim-Christian relationships.